Welcome everyone to this session on Nuke 16. This time around we're going to be discussing two of the major features of the release. One around the 3D system and what we have brought in there, and the other one what we have brought around the Blink and TD workflows. With us is Chris Wetherly,
hey everyone.
which I think most of you know, but I'm going to say, who are you, mate?
I didn't know you'd start with such an open one. Hi. For anyone who doesn't know me, I'm a senior product manager on the Nuke team. I'm helping to drive the new 3D system updates, among a few other things. But I used to be an artist. I used to work at MPC back in the day, things on Guardians of the Galaxy, Maleficent. And since then, I've been at Foundry for close to 10 years now, and I've really enjoyed being in this space, trying to actually build the tools that I used to use or wanted to use.
It has been a very interesting journey with you. We have been working for 10 years, which is incredible.
I'm surprised you're not tired of me.
But in the last few years, you have been leading the 3D system. Tell everyone, what were the decisions and the reasons why we decided to really jump into this journey?
Yeah, I mean, obviously everything we do here is driven by talking to artists, talking to our users and understanding their needs. And a big part of the 3D system was looking at something that was been around for a long time and asking what is it that modern workflows require, and things like the performance and the scalability. We were always hitting limits with what we could do and achieve with the classic system, and also how we could introduce new workflows for working and collaborating with all the opportunities that compers tend to access. Because we find compers, yes, you're always needed at the end of the pipeline to make sure you build the magic for the final shot, and the 3D system has been key for that. But we hear so many people using the 3D system just to generate amazing looks or effects for look dev, and you see all the innovation that's happening across non-photoreal films and how that's achieved. And we really think there's a lot of space that can be done there in Nuke for artists, and what compers can really contribute more than just what they already do, which is a hell of a lot.
It's been very interesting because obviously the classic 3D system was built 25 years ago, but with the idea of cards and basic geometry projections that were amazing to actually save us time and kind of continue what we do as compers, which is cheating. And it was very fast in a certain way for doing that. But with the complexity of the stuff that started to happen, obviously things start to slow down and everything. So now we have this new system. How did we decide to build that new system?
Obviously, USD is like this thing that everyone's focused on in terms of the benefits of the technology and all it's allowing for workflow-wise. We actually opted for a USD architecture for the new system, not necessarily because of all the other great stuff of USD, but really just for what do comp artists do most. And it's they bring in geometry to project on, or they bring in geometry in order to do cheats and fixes such as projections or matte paintings or casting shadows or things like that. They basically want to get the information they need to get a shot done last minute. And USD gave us the architecture to allow us to bring that data in as fast as possible and at larger scales as possible. And really for me that was quite important, is just serving the needs of comp artists in the places they need most, and USD allowed us to do that. So that was part of the choice of the architecture. But a big part of it was also it should feel like Nuke. It should feel like Nuke's 3D system and feel like home. So we want to basically serve a 3D system that allows a comp artist to jump in and work like they always have, to chuck nose down and not have to know anything about USD, but be able to benefit from all the really great things about USD, whether that's working with the scale or with the same assets as other departments, or working non-destructively and always having what they need at their fingertips.
Obviously, and this, let's be honest, and this is part of what we wanted to have these conversations. People are asking, why is it still in beta? So we have made that decision, and I think we have tried to be clear about it, but obviously we haven't. And I think it'll be nice to hear from you, why have we taken that decision, and where are we in that journey then?
Yeah, it felt like with the 3D system being such a core part of Nuke and Compa's workflows, I really wanted to make sure we got it right. And the only way I felt we were going to get it right was to put artist feedback at the center of building the new 3D system. That did mean we sort of pushed it very early out into people so that as early as building the architecture itself, we could work with clients of all sizes to ask, is this fulfilling the needs you have? Can we shape this architecture in a way that will service you going forward? And it's been really fruitful. That's allowed us to actually make some big choices that we may have not made originally without, having that exposure. It also meant that we decided to keep the classic system alongside the new system because obviously we didn't want to stop people being able to work. So we think, making sure we can give artists the tools they need while building the new stuff was really key. But that adds complexity, adds a different dynamic to developing a new system where we can't just build from clean slate. We have to make sure everything still works in the old system while introducing a lot of the new concepts. Another part of it was just USD itself as a technology is really powerful. But how compas want to work or are used to working in the classic 3D system is something we didn't want to lose. It wasn't about building the new system to just do what the classic system did, but it was about building the new system to work how compas find intuitive and feel like home. And sometimes there's a bit of tug of war between how USD thinks and how comp workflows are used to. So we've been really trying to be mindful about balancing that. We see a lot of other tools out there that, do USD really well, but you have to know USD to really use them. For Nuke's 3D space, we don't want that. We want you to come to it, be able to do all the workflows you're used to. Maybe there's a slight adjustment to be made in some spaces, but overall it should be intuitive. And then when you want to step into using more of the USD special source, whether that be payloads, whether that be variants, whether it be what have you, you can go into that space. But it wasn't it should feel like home.
As you say, USD is really powerful. And it brings new workflows that we really want to take advantage of.
Yeah.
But at the moment, we're also trying to find the balance of the ease of use and that part. So what have you guys been working on for this release?
Yeah, this release was really about taking the artist feedback and, showcasing that we are listening. As we said, it's been in beta a while. And we put a lot of nodes into the first release just so that people could experience and play with workflows and then give us feedback based on that. And that's been both good and bad in the sense that people have been giving us feedback, which is so appreciated. Please keep doing that. But it also means that when we've hit a leg where maybe we've had to step back and redevelop or rethink of something, certain areas haven't pushed us quickly as we'd like. So with the new system, or with the latest release, we've really looked at where can we take that feedback and make sure we're implementing it in the right way. So even things just like the UI, we've looked at the UI and the node properties because artists were saying, you're showing all these USD knobs. I'm not really interested in seeing them right now. They're kind of cluttering up my space. I want this to be tidier. So we're bringing that back. The way that we were modifying the nodes upstream, because with the new system, you have a path and masking workflow, because that's a great new benefit of the new scene graph and the new USD system. But by default, it was only affecting the node above it. But artists basically said to us, no, we'd like it to work more like the classic system and do everything above it. We originally explored that idea, but thought, well, if you're working with much larger stages, that might be detrimental. But thanks to artists playing with it and saying, no, it's better to do it this way, we've adopted that. And it's also about looking at workflows where we can make small improvements or better improvements. So the snap menu, for instance, we made it a bit more nicer UI-wise, and we added some functionalities. So you can snap to bounding boxes now, so you can easily move your pivot at one click, or you can snap geo over a frame range and key across a frame range. And this is where we don't want to just duplicate the existing system, but actually step in and do some more fun stuff that artists have said, hey, it'd be cool if you could do this as well.
I think that's where I have really enjoyed a lot of this work, is rethinking some of those areas that we could add value that is not the really magic fancy feature, but it's those details that you get into the new workflow. With USD, you actually ended up in these two spaces. You have those little bits for artists that are great. You have the pipeline side for the bigger studios that are actually or not just the big studios, for anyone that is using USD properly across their pipeline and be able to use their own version of USD and replace it and have the power of it. What else do we have on now that people can start doing, or why would they start using the 3D system?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I mean, we definitely want more people to jump in and start playing with it and giving feedback. I think before people would jump in and see a few things like the light's not fully working and being like, I'll wait a little bit. I think the more, that's better now, by the way, you can have a look and play. But the more we get people jumping in and playing with it and saying, this would be great if you can add this to the workflow, the more we can do those embellishments we've just explained there. With this new work, there's so much that's gone in on that artist touch. From the UI side, there's all the little features there. There's new constraint workflows, so really looking at how we can make it easier to, we've always been used to using a look at, but now you can constrain using transformation or parenting. You can constrain to vertexes, faces, have a time offset, a transformation offset. I mean, the whole work that we've done across Scanline Render 2 for this release, that's a massive part of the work and kind of a big stepping stone as well to helping us get to that out of beta, because, I mean, we see the feedback online all the time, which is great. I love the fact that people have the passion to tell us really positive things and also tell us the critical things. Yep. And a big part of it is, well, why do I want a new 3D system if I can't render out of it? So the Scanline Render 2 work has been both about making it a better node in terms of better sampling and more intuitive sampling controls, more control over motion blur, making sure that you can toggle motion blur for just the transformation of the geo, the camera lens movement, the camera movement itself, light movement. So you have all these controls for motion blur, better AOV setup. So for those who really want to get into the fine weeds of it. And that's kind of bearing the lead is we've re-architected it to be a ray tracer. Not like a full path ray tracer. It's a ray tracer where a comp artist controls the number of bounces. But it's designed for comp artist needs. We were asking ourselves the question of what should rendering in Nuke really be about? And it's to support what you kind of said earlier. It's to support cheats. It's to support all those fixes. And, to ask the question of when should you render in comp versus when do you actually need to kick something back to do, in Katana or something like that. So an example I like to use is like, you shouldn't really think about rendering King Kong with all his fur and everything else going on. But if I've got a shot where I have the actress on a card or something and I actually want to show the reflection of her in the eye and I haven't got that, I should be able to just load in the giant asset of King Kong, not have to worry about the performance hit of that scale, just isolate the iris or the eye, put a shader on it where I can get a reflection off that shader or generate my own specular, and then use that to then comp in later. So by making Scanline Render that ray tracer, we give more ability for artists to compers to cheat and to render the passes they need last minute.
We were a bit cautious on how we talked about the Scanline Render this time around. I love that we tried to do that. I also think that because we're doing this now and kind of telling you a little bit more of what is happening under the hood, it's also giving you a little bit of an idea of where we are going with it. I like how you actually just explain the difference of the rendering in Scanline Render to using a regular offline render or a production offline render. We'll show some of this in a moment, but it will be nice that we can actually show some of this, what the Scanline Render does now on the details and everything. Because I think, I love, for example, the AOV's UI. Like that bit is a great piece of work.
Yeah, no, I definitely want people to see and experience more. I mean, it's still developing is also part of why we didn't push this really hard. We were being mindful of, like we said, with the journey we've had, people coming to it and having an expectation of things being 100% there if we don't, give the right context. And we do want to make sure performance in Scanline Render is also improving and getting better. And that's an area where we've put the ray tracing architecture in place. You can use it. You can create reflections, refractions, transmission, things like that. But right now, it's not as fast as we want it to be. So it didn't feel like the place to say, this is it. It felt like the place to say, please come explore and play with this, continue giving us feedback so that we can come out of beta and then with the performance and every other part of it, really say, this is it, where you can use those workflows as you need to.
Part of rendering, actually part of what we do in Nuke is projections. So what is happening to cameras?
Oh, cameras is such an interesting space. Part of, I mentioned earlier about having both the classic and the new system is also about how we build workflows. So we've been exploring what it means to have, your cameras in a USD stage space and your cameras in the existing Nuke sort of 3D system space, and the best workflows to balance between there. So currently you don't see the USD camera locators in the current build of Nuke. And that's a problem. I load in my stage, I can't actually see the cameras, the shot camera that I want to work with, unless I pipe it into a classic camera node in Nuke. What we want to do, and what we've already essentially doing now, is make it so that those camera locators are immediately visible on the stage when you import it, and then you can pick the one you want, you can start editing it directly, and you don't have to duplicate that USD camera prim, which is essentially the workflow you have to do now. So we're really focusing on what is a intuitive workflow for cameras in this new system, where again, it's all USD based, but where an artist who doesn't really know much about USD or doesn't care much about USD, they don't have to worry about it. They just see the camera in their viewer. They just create the node that says, I want to edit this camera, and then they can go ahead and do all of that work. So it's just allowing those connection points and allowing things to feel a bit more intuitive while exposing more of the scale that an import of a USD stage can give you.
Obviously, we have discussed what is new in the system. We have discussed why we did it. Also, why we are still on beta. But I think part of those questions are coming from this group is, when are we going to be out of beta? And I think more that when, I think that what we would like to tell you a little bit more about is how are we going to be out of beta?
Yeah, obviously everyone wants to know the when, and I'd love to give just a very specific here and now, or like this thing. For me, it really is revolving around, have we achieved a valuable workflow that makes you as artists, you as comp artists, jump over and say, yes, this is making my life better. This is something which is worth diving in and benefiting from. And I think at the moment we've been putting all these building blocks in place, like that performance and scalability of the new system, the new little features that we've added. I should mention, for the UV project node, the Geo UV project node, there's a reference frame which essentially allows you to do sticky projections. So expanding workflows that we know are much requested in some senses. So building all those building blocks so that when you can come into the new system, it's highly performant, highly stable. It has workflows that offer you new tools to achieve things that you couldn't before, especially around the core workflows of things like projections, and then give you new possibilities, like we were saying with Scanline Render 2, but also at that performant level that we really want to get it to. So for me, I'm still pushing for getting the encapsulation of that first workflow step, so I can give a whole workflow to artists to come in and use. And then that will be bringing that workflow out of beta for artists. There will still be other things that we'll still need to continue to build and develop on. Things like a new particle system or new modeling workflows that, again, are unique to what compers need, not what happens in other softwares. And then we can look at each release, looking at a whole workflow and bringing those out of beta as we go. And that's the way that I feel like we can generate something for artists that they can start really enjoying, and each release get excited by being able to do something new that they couldn't before.
This has been on beta for long just because we wanted the feedback and we want to create something for you. I think coming out of beta, it is coming of those workflows, and for you to be able to enjoy the new system, the new workflows that come with that. And it is a stepping stone as we move into getting the basic workflows there and then being able to bring new things into it that you couldn't do before. But again, please come give us feedback on this. As you hear, Chris and team have been listening to all of it, reading you online, emails, all the way, whatever way you want to communicate with us, please do. This is the only way that we can do it, and it's exactly what we want to make Nuke 2 is for you. So actually, I want to ask you something that's actually partly my fault. But you guys went into it and we had several conversations about this. And is why did we change the color of the nodes and what is happening with the color of the nodes?
Yeah, no, I think that's really an important thing because it shows like care and attention to detail. And I do think it was a failure point early on for us. Obviously, early on, we wanted to help differentiate and help artists understand what is new, what is classic. And we wanted to make sure that obviously going forward, the new system should inherit the visual language and the color language that artists are used to. So the new system became red nodes, the classic system became green nodes. What got lost during that was the importance of the visual language of what you see when you're looking at a node graph and how easily it needs to be to see what node is doing based on where it is, what connection endpoints are coming into it, and the colors of it. And unfortunately, the colors just sort of got color drenched into one color and of another. And that's something which, yes, definitely seen feedback and heard good feedback about, how important that is. And while it isn't in the most recent release, we've been working through the designs to make sure that, soon you'll see a much nicer version which follows the same sort of visual language you're used to, and we can bring that readability back to the node graph. So yeah, I mean, I actually wouldn't say your fault, but I think a thing where we should hold our hands up and say, we didn't quite catch that one in the way we should have, but we definitely understand the importance and value of what it means to artists to be able to read their node graph and what that visual language is.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. Right, we have always talked about, as you say, how important is the visual language in the node graph and how you can recognize what is happening in a script when you get a script from another artist. Is hopefully, unless it is one of those meshy, horrible things, you actually can pick it up quite quickly because you know exactly what the color language is there. And we were thinking that yes, having the red, moving the new system to red was kind of trying to maintain the color language there, and it didn't work. It's something that we have learned, and definitely there's quite nice designs happening in the team at the moment. So really looking forward to get some of that to people in the beta list and later on to everyone. So now Nuke 16 is out. Obviously we continue to be on beta. What feedback do we want? What can we ask all these people that are watching us now to come back with us to?
I mean, for me, it's a case of the earlier in this cycle, you can give us feedback on the feature requests around, especially projections and map painting workflows. Sooner we can start implementing them and hopefully get more of them in for the next release for you as well. The more that we can see people testing with a wider variety of script examples, like we try to create and pull in as many as we can, but an obvious limitation is we can only recreate so much, and we can't even recreate the true depth and complexity of what artists do across the spectrum. So the more that people can test with those kind of scripts, and if possible, absolutely share them, then that kind of stuff really helps us. And I think just in general, having a play and looking at the workflows and letting us know, for me, where it feels like home and where it doesn't. Because if you're using it and something sticks out for you as not feeling quite right, those are the things that we still want to continue making sure it feels right for you.
So thank you, Chris. I think with that, we'll move into the next features. Right, so we have our next feature. This one is very much part of the core of what Nuke is. And most of you have access to it either as part of a node or part of the architecture of Nuke for you to build plugins on. With us on this chat, we have Chloe Broadbent, who has been working with the team and building all amazing things that are about Blink. But before we jump into Blink, Chloe, I have had the pleasure to work with you for many years here at Foundry, but you have also had a chance to be out and work in some VFX houses. Tell us a little bit about you.
So I'm Chloe. It's nice to meet everyone who's not here right now. I started my career at Foundry almost a decade ago on the Mari team. I was a QA there for about 4 years before I spent about 2 years at Framestore working with the internal systems and systems engineering team, doing some awesome work with people there. And then eventually I came back to Foundry to work with the Nuke team, who I always had a lot of respect for, and I always loved looking at Nuke. And since then, I have been working with the high performance teams, and that's been looking more at the GPU and CPU compute side of our hardware architecture, as well as working across the Nuke product teams to deliver really cool features, I hope.
They are cool features. And I think Blink is one of those things that a lot of compers probably don't know as much about it. Some people really know about it and love it. What is it about Blink, and why are we looking at it again so much?
Well, I think that in essence, Blink kind of represents the ethos of Nuke as an application. What you can do with Blink is what you can do with all of Nuke, which is build very powerful custom effects that fit the workflow that you're trying to produce, so you can really put your stamp or your style on a piece of footage. And Blink is the GPU accelerated and CPU consistent framework that allows you to do this based on an underlying image processing library.
I think it is important here to kind of talk about, as you just explained, like it is a piece of tech that allows you to have the same result out of the GPU and the CPU, which obviously in comp and in your studios is important because as an artist, you want to be able to
playback fast as you're writing your effects or as you're working, but also know that when you send it to the farm to render, you're going to get the same result.
Exactly. So that is kind of the core functionality of it. So why are we looking at it now?
So now in particular, there's been some really interesting work coming out of the animation industry recently. So you guys will probably have heard a lot about non-photoreal effects. I know that they're the talks that I enjoy watching or reading about. But a lot of the work that Sony did a couple of years back with Spider-Verse sort of revived an old art form that has disappeared in recent years, or in the last decade or so, with the drive towards photorealism, which has created some incredible productions where we've gotten to the point where you can make a lion talk and it looks like a lion talking. We've suspended disbelief to the point where we don't have to suspend disbelief because it's just belief. It's just real. But what we've lost in a way, or what's been missing for quite a while, has been that distinctive artistic style that you can develop and give to the content that you're producing, like the painterly stamp that you only get when you're working with your own hand or through your own eye. And when people are starting to bring back these kinds of looks or more stylized effects or workflows in animation, we've seen a lot of this specifically with the painterly effects coming out. Blink is the tool that allows you to do that. So it's not like it's the entire part of that workflow, but it is a part of very quickly getting to that look or that effect.
Yeah, no, just I think that is perfect, right? Is that idea that a couple of years back, we started seeing an increase of use of Blink because of the non-photorealistic workflows that allow artists to have really fast feedback and make creative decisions before even getting into lighting or doing that workflow. Obviously, as you say, not the whole film or the whole thing is just done in Nuke, not even close to that. We all know that that's not. But Blink allowed them to create really interesting plugins and ways to actually fast the process.
It helps you really figure out what your style is going to be and define the look of your show in a really interesting way, which we've seen a lot of it coming out all over the place, really, in a lot of productions now, which is, I think, a really exciting time to be watching because it's beautiful. It's beautiful to see what only a human touch can give to an art form, which is what non-photoreal effects do a lot of the time.
Yeah, no, so I think just to kind of there, so to close that bit, I think that there is, because of that, a lot of companies and artists starting coming to us and asking more about Blink and what else we could do. What was the thing that we found that was the biggest blocker for everyone?
Well, I'm going to be really blunt about this, and I probably shouldn't be, but the biggest blocker to adoption was that it was hard to learn. So it's hard to understand. It was quite obtuse in terms of the errors that it gave back when you were writing it. It could be unstable a lot of the time, so it could crash and you wouldn't know why. And the documentation for how to use it was really unclear. There just wasn't enough information there to allow users to actually write effects that would run stably. So a lot of people did do amazing work in Blink, but there was a barrier to entry for a lot of people that shouldn't have been there.
So what have you guys been up to?
So what have we done? How have we fixed this? So we actually started looking at Blink back in 15.1. And at the time there, what we really tried to do was fix the problem with the documentation. So we tried to make it very, very clear what you can do, what you can't do, and how you write kernels in Blink. So we released the updated documentation in 15.1. And if you do want to learn about Blink, I really do recommend you take a look at those because they are very good. But in 16 specifically, what we've actually really focused on is trying to improve the developer experience or the development experience when you're actually writing code using Blink scripts in Nuke. So we focused in on the code editor itself, on the BlinkScript editor. A lot of being able to do something is based around the UX of what you're using. So in the BlinkScript editor previously, it was very much just a text editor and you could use it at your own risk.
And normally, anyone that does code don't just want plain text.
Don't just want plain text. So a lot of what we put in was just the basics that you might get in an IDE. So stuff like auto-closing of brackets, indentation, tabs and spaces. There's stuff in there. We also put in find and replace. And to carry on with the idea of trying to make it easier to learn Blink, we also added a tab menu. So you can press tab on a function type or keyword or a enum, and it will give you the context or the most important piece of documentation around it, so what it is and how to use it.
So you're attaching what you were doing on the documentation in 15.1
directly into the application.
Directly into application.
So you don't have to look at the docs necessarily. It's all of the information that you need to write. BlinkScript is there at your fingertips. I mentioned previously it could be quite unstable. One of the main causes of instability came from something called out-of-bounds accesses, which is where you can write a kernel and then you can put something in the process function that maybe tries to access a coordinate in coordinate space, and you're running that on every single pixel in the image that you're generating. And sometimes it's very easy to go beyond that image. So you can make an out-of-bounds access, and in that case, it will crash, which I imagine was frustrating for a lot of people. So I'm very sorry about that because Nuke shouldn't crash. We put in safety rails to guard against this during development so that when you're writing your kernel, you can be sure that the errors that would be caused by those kinds of accesses or standard crashes will be caught so that you can fix what's causing them in your kernel before you reach the stage of actually rendering or using them in production.
Obviously, Blink is a tool that mostly for TDs, artists will normally see most about the node and the effect, right? Which allows them to do these effects fast. But what types of access do the TDs have to Blink?
So there are two levels to Blink. So I think a really good entry point to getting into Blink and Blink scripts is through the BlinkScript node itself, which is where we spent a lot of our time and effort on during the 16.0 release. That's the environment that we're talking about, and it makes it a lot easier to get started and start writing your own effects. And I think you can start doing that very quickly. You can make a lens distortion, for instance, just by dry translating a pixel or messing around with the color by position and values and everything else. But if you are more comfortable with Blink, and if you are maybe looking to go further in what you can do, then the Blink API is the underlying framework behind the BlinkScript node. And if you write things in the Blink API, it's actually a very powerful tool. For instance, I don't know how many of you know this, but the BlinkScript particle node is actually written with the Blink API. So that's an example of the sort of thing that you can do using the Blink API under the hood.
So we're trying to make it more accessible and for people to learn it more, because we think that there is all these levels and depth to Blink that hopefully we can see people testing and doing a lot more effects with it.
You can write anything or almost any image operation in Nuke in Blink. So I think that you could rewrite the spherical transform node if you wanted to. You could write a lens distortion. You can add a lens flare. We're talking a lot about non-photoreal workflows right now because we're seeing a lot of amazing things happening. But actually, you could use it for pretty much anything you want to do, whether it's hyper-realistic CG and there's a particular way that you want something to work that we might not have or that you want to extend, or whether it's a painterly effect.
Actually, I thought there is something we haven't talked about in that space, and is we also use Blink in the timeline.
We do use Blink in the timeline.
What did we add it into the timeline for it?
Well, actually, I think you'll find that in 15.1, alongside doing some incredible documentation, which I know we're all psyched about, but we also extended the BlinkScript node to be able to support non-RGBA channel input and output. So that means that any channel that you have in Nuke, you can now read directly into the BlinkScript without having to shuffle it into an image channel. But in this release, I think we'll be talking about it a bit later, but you can actually do multi-channel Blink on the timeline, or anything on the timeline really, but mostly Blink is the important one. But yes, that means that you can run your Blink scripts directly on the timeline, which is obviously a GPU environment, so it will be even faster than it's already fast. And you'll be able to preview your Blink scripts across different shots. So if you're setting up if you're setting up a sequence that you want to work across, then you can see how a particular Blink script will behave on a particular asset, much like you might do with a copycat and inference workflow. It's the same kind of thing. And playback in almost real time.
Obviously, a lot of this comes from the feedback of talking to the different people. There is one of those features that I think was a request actually from the more experienced people on Blink that will allow them to do and add and not have to copy code that they have to distribute across every single Blink node. What is that?
Well, let me tell you about that. Let me tell you. So first off, in the Blink API, there is include support. So you can have includes in your headers and you can reference other libraries. In the BlinkScript node itself, when you're working directly in Nuke, as much as the features that we've added sound a lot like the sort of things you get in an IDE, and we are trying to make it a more comfortable coding experience, Nuke is not an IDE. It is a VFX pixel processing application. What a line. And a very good one. But in terms of trying to figure out what makes sense for Blink scripts and how we can support a similar workflow to includes, we added the concept of library files. So library files are a single level of include where you can add common code snippets, function. Actually, if you even add a / comment above your function, it will show up in the tab menu if you want to add any documentation for anything you might build yourself. But really, they're just a way of having a short list of common math functions or code snippets that you want to reuse across your different BlinkScript kernels so that you're not writing them out every single time or copying them, pasting them across multiple BlinkScripts. They are a reference to a file on disk, and these files can be baked directly into the kernel with a new bake and make live workflow that we have that works a lot like live groups in the same kind of way.
I think that will make quite a few of those TDs out there quite happy. They have the IDE, they have the better text editor, the help functionalities, safety rails, library files. What else is happening in Blink?
BlinkScript or writing in the BlinkScript editor might not be your preferred way to work. We all have our preferred tools to use, but really I want to come back to the error handling and call out the fact that even if you're working elsewhere in a more developed IDE or environment for more complex workflows, you can still double check your code a lot faster in Nuke. And you can check the compilation, and the error messaging is now directly in the editor itself. So you'll have a list of all of the errors that you have, and you can search through them, and you can debug your kernels a lot faster, even if you're writing them outside of Nuke, which is quite nice.
I think that obviously there is a lot of work that has been gone into Blink, as you can see. Obviously, it's not around adding extra functionality itself, but it's making sure that it's easier for everyone out there to use it, learn it faster. And again, a lot of this was done based on feedback from everyone. What would you like to hear from the group out there in the next pieces of feedback? Is there any areas that you want more feedback on, or is there anything that you would like to look into for Blink later?
So Blink is a really exciting technology. It always has been. And the way it's being used, I find personally astounding. I think it's incredible what everyone has done with it and the things that have come out from it already. In terms of what I'd like to see, I would like to be able to be in a position where it's something that's easy for people to pick up and for people to learn. And I'm really hoping that the work that we've done will actually enable that, so that when I can talk to more and more people and have more and more conversations about Blink. And as you're using it, if you're a new user, or if you're an experienced user and you're coming around, I think I would love to hear about what you want to do next. I don't think I should be telling you what workflows you need. I think you probably know that a lot better than us. So if you pick up the tool and you start using it and you discover that there's something missing or something that you would like, or there's a way that you think that you could really push the boundaries of filmmaking and look and style within that and the content you're producing, I'd love to hear about the ways that we could help you do it.
I don't think I can say anything better than that, people. Let's move on to the next one.